Sharon Isbin is the most celebrated classical guitarist of her generation. The Grammy Award winner has performed throughout the world as a headliner with an array of ensembles and as a soloist with more than 170 orchestras. Now the American virtuoso teams with jazz masters Stanley Jordan and Romero Lubambo in a concert called Guitar Passions. Preview's editor John Mark Raffis speaks with Isbin about her introduction to the guitar and her studies with the legendary Andre Segovia. Isbin also talks about her partners for the Guitar Passions tour and what audiences can expect to hear at the concert.
You were born in Minneapolis, but I know that when you were 9, you began studying the guitar in Italy. How did that happen?
My father was invited to be a consultant for a scientific project there. He was a professor at the University of Minnesota, and our entire family moved to Italy. And my oldest brother said he wanted guitar lessons. So my parents discovered there was a wonderful teacher who had studied with Segovia and was commuting to the music school once a week and touring all over Italy. So they brought my brother for the interview. When he discovered it was classical and not Elvis Presley, he said, "No, that's not for me." So I volunteered to take his place by default.
Did you sense then that you were drawn to the guitar, or were you just game to try something new?
To me, it seemed exotic because in those days, classical guitar was a rarity in the United States. You could count on the fingers of one hand the conservatories or universities that even offered a program in it. And being in Italy and having the opportunity to have an instrument that was actually made for me, that would be my own, I wouldn't be sharing the piano with dozens of other little kids as I had earlier, I decided that even though it wasn't something I had any professional aspirations towards, that it was something that really spoke to me and allowed me to express myself.
Did you realize pretty quickly that you had an unusual affinity for the guitar?
My teacher did, and I was really not serious about it until I was 14. We had moved back to Minneapolis at that point, and I'd gotten very involved with science, with model rockets. My father used to say, "You can't launch your rockets till you put in an hour on the guitar." That's how they bribed me to continue. And when I was 14, I won a competition, and the award was to perform for 10,000 people with the Minnesota Orchestra. And that, to me, was such a thrilling experience that I decided to abandon my worms and grasshoppers being launched into space and instead turn my attention and devote it exclusively to studying the guitar and becoming the best I could be.
I know that when you were a little older, you studied at least in a limited way with Segovia, and it seems as though there may be no other musician who is as closely associated with an instrument as, you say that name and you just immediately think guitar, and it's as if the two are connected at the hip. What did you learn from him?
Well, he really popularized classical guitar and put it on the map. And what I learned from him was the beauty of his sound. That was really what most intrigued me, and to be able to sit just inches from him while he would demonstrate something, and you could hear that gem-like, extraordinary, glistening sound emerge from the strings. That stayed with me, and that became a model for me.
The tour that you're bringing to Penn State, Guitar Passions, is based on your 2011 CD, Sharon Isbin and Friends, Guitar Passions. The CD is largely Spanish and Latin music. Is that a fair characterization?
That's absolutely correct, yes. That is the thematic concept, but within that, we really explore the music in a variety of different ways. For example, one of the pieces that we'll be performing in the concert is based on a well-known work by the Spanish composer Rodrigo, who wrote the famous Concierto de Aranjuez. And the second movement, the Adagio, is what really pulls the heartstrings of an audience. And we do an arrangement that my good friend and colleague from the past, Laurindo Almeida, had made for me to do with him and another jazz guitarist at that time, Larry Coryell. And we toured with that. What's special about that particular arrangement is that it's not a literal translation, but instead it allows the jazz performer, in this case Romero Lubambo, to improvise the English horn part with a jazz inflection, and it involves, instead of a big orchestral solo at the end, a bossa nova improv, where Stanley's going to go nuts with his great and unique imagination, musical imagination and artistry.
What are some of the other works that we can expect to hear in the concert?
One of the other things that Stanley and I have done together is a work by an Argentinian composer, Senesi, and Stanley is improvising, whereas I'm following the score of the composer, and that creates a really extraordinary blend of cultures, styles, and it's a lot of fun, and of course it's different each time. Romero and I will pay homage to Antonio Carlos Jobim. Jobim was, of course, one of Brazil's pop music icons, and we'll be doing one of his pieces called Chovendo na Roseira, which is about a rainbow. Stanley will be doing some improvisations on his own, as well as I'll do some solos. Romero, I'll bring to the fore, since this is the 120th anniversary of Andres Segovia, do one of his most famous transcriptions, which is Asturias, also featured in a music video that you can see at my website on the video page, and is musically featured on Guitar Passions. And then we'll be doing some other music for trio setting of Laurindo Almeida, some Bach improvisations. It'll be a really fun evening, and one unlike any you've ever heard, because this when you bring together artists from different musical genres, in this case Brazilian, bossa nova, jazz, and classical, the possibilities really are limitless.
Stanley Jordan, of course, is best known as a jazz guitarist, but he has certainly performed a variety of music, and he is an incredibly innovative guitarist.
Well, I first met Stanley quite a long time ago when I invited him to appear in a festival I had directed at Carnegie Hall, and then we were on a tour together called Guitar Summit. And one of the things that Stanley has wowed the musical world with is his tapping technique, where he actually plays the fretboard like a keyboard. And by doing so, he's able to achieve a remarkable quality of sound and diversity of counterpoint and musical inflection that is very different than if you were simply using a pick or strumming. It's really bringing to light something that it's hard to describe, because you look at it and you can't really figure out what he's doing. It's so awesome.
How about Romero Lubambo?
Well, I love Romero's playing, and I too have known him for some time. He's again, both of these are great people as well, and fun to spend time with. And Romero has a wonderful imagination. So when he takes the instrument and gives it a Brazilian flavor and a bossa nova beat, you're intoxicated. And it's particularly nostalgic for me because I played so many years with Laurindo Almeida in the trio, and it's really fun to go back to some of these explorations and do them with a 21st century twist.
Sharon Isbin, Stanley Jordan, and Romero Lubambo perform classical, jazz, and Brazilian music in Guitar Passions, January 31st, 2014 at Penn State's Eisenhower Auditorium. For tickets or information, visit cpa.psu.edu or phone 1-800-ARTS-TIX.